Ben Shapiro, Gavin Newsom had a conversation. So, will this be a good conversation? One thing that is very clear, Gavin Newsom has been criticized. I've been one of them with some of his conversations with right wingers like Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon. But he's becoming a little bit more aggressive in terms of his rhetoric to MAGA with like being memeing Donald Trump. With that said, Gavin Newsom's trying to run a presidency. He's trying to understand the right. And Ben Shapiro's quickly realizing that MAGA does not give a fuck about him because they're willing to bring in Nazis and Nick Fuentes into the fold. So MAGA and the right is turning on Ben Shapiro. And now Ben Shapiro is talking to Gavin Newsom. Is it a coincidence? I think not. I think not. If you're a white Irish person, you don't want your country to be taken over by Islam. That's pretty obvious. Is that pretty obvious? Why? I mean, like I said, it depends on its integration. Right? It's not like Irish people are taking over Arabia. Is that how you were supposed to think about it based off like their identity? If these people come over, that means their identity is changing the culture. That's what I told you. It depends on the integration of the culture. America is a melting pot where integration is all about becoming like prideful about America. And that's what most immigrants become. People don't realize a lot of people who are immigrants become very prideful of America. They love America. And that's like the most important thing. I'm not really a big fan of the idea we should be like parading different flags, celebrating your other country. I kind of empathize with the point that why would you be utilizing a different flag if you're not in that country? Like, how can you be prideful from a country you're escaping from? It's the same premise I feel about the people that are Republican that have like the not conservative, the Confederate flag. I'm like, you're not a Confederacy. Why are you praising the Confederate flag? So it's like having American pride is important. I don't care what your identity is. If you integrate and have American pride, that's all that matters. So that's why your question of like, oh, what if Irish people bring in Muslims? Like, if they endorse Irish pride and decided to integrate in the Irish culture, then they're just going to be Irish like everybody else. So the Muslim part doesn't matter. Now, if the question is, would you want the Muslim faith to take over the country? Obviously not. But that's not the same as like Muslim people, so it's all about the integration, the assimilation of people into your country. That's what matters. You're kind of thinking a little bit more to like one-dimensionally skate. So, all right, let's get into it.
If you don't uphold the principle, I'm going to call you out for not upholding the principle. On his epitaph, it will read 45th and 47th presidents of the...
All right, Ben Shapiro, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I love it. All the way from Florida. We'll get to that in a moment.
Hey, you seem a little bit spicy about it.
Yeah,
a little salty.
Well, you know, Texas, that would have been more spicy. But,
Yeah, how about the Muslim art gangs? Maybe deport those. I agree. I'm against all rapists, regardless if they're Muslim, Christian, atheists. All of them. All of them should be locked up. Arguably worse. Muslims don't assimilate. Based.
No, especially, come on, you're a Hollywood kid, at least Hollywood adjacent. You're
born and bred in St. Joe's in Burbank.
I love that.
And
what year? 1984. And you went, and it's interesting because you were sort of middle class family, grew up, and got a new book we're going to get to in a moment, Lions and Scavengers. But in that, you talk about your home, where I think 6 members of your family live in a 2-bedroom home, 1 bathroom, of Burbank, California, and you describe it, at least briefly, as pretty bucolic. Huh?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I mean, Burbank was a great place to grow up. It was like kids playing in the street, and I had the greatest privilege of all. Right, I'm an American, growing up in the greatest country in the history of the world, and I've got a 2-parent household. My parents love each other, and they take care of us, and they're able to make a middle class income. My mom started off as a secretary and worked her way up to become vice president of a small film and TV company. My dad came out here to be a composer, and he ended up playing piano at a restaurant on Ventura Boulevard, I believe. It was in, or actually, it was in across from Universal Studios. It was the Michelli's over there. And
he was, like a 5-night-a-week piano guy.
A couple nights a week, he'd go in there and play jazz piano because he'd been playing since he was 14, and so that's how I grew up. And again, I think that's the American dream: is you start there, and then you end up making a better life for your kids, and they end up making a better life for themselves. And that upward trajectory is kind of what America's all about.
I love it. How many brothers and sisters?
So I have 3 younger sisters.
3 younger sisters.
3 younger sisters.
And were they music? Because you were a violinist.
Right. Yeah. I started playing violin when I was 5. And then I was pretty good. I mean,
it was your dad just saying, you're going, son, you will be? I mean, they threw that at you and they made you and you're crying.
No, it definitely wasn't that.
You loved it.
No, I was pretty dedicated to it for sure. I was practicing by the time I was 16, maybe 3 hours a day or something. And
I liked Newsom until I found out he was receiving APAC money and now has this weasel on here. I don't think that's a good enough reason not to like him. But I understand. Like, a lot of people who are anti-Israel think that APAC is a kind of funnel to push Israel's interests. So anybody receiving Israel money is like pro-Israel. I understand the mindset. I disagree with the premise, but I get it. Now, I do think having Ben Shapiro on is an interesting choice. I don't know why he would bring Ben Shapiro on, so I'm curious to see how this goes.
then I looked at sort of the life of a musician,
Not
and I thought, well, again, that upward trajectory is very difficult, particularly in classical music. And so I thought, maybe I better shift career strategies here. But when I went to UCLA, I went to UCLA for undergrad.
Newsom has now rejected APAC money, so that doesn't hold. Fair enough. I don't really look into like who accepts APAC money or not. It's just not my primary focus. But hey, Devious said he rejected it, so there you go.
When I went to UCLA, I was 16 at the time. My parents didn't want me going out of state for school, so I was living at home because I'm 16.
Shapiro is Israel first, not an American. I think it's fair to say that Shapiro is Israel first. I think that's a very fair thing to say.
And I thought I was going to double major in biology and in music, actually. And I got on.
I don't give a fuck about Ben Shapiro's life story. Let's get into politics.
So you're right. My first book came out when I was 20. From it was sort of an expo. I went to Harvard Law School at 20 at a real estate firm or real estate wing of a major law firm called Goodwin Procter.
Right.
I practiced there. I lasted for about 10 months. Decided I hate him turning to me and saying, "No," but it all worked out. Politics was something that I was always very invested.
I don't care. Why are we? That's not what we should be talking about. How bullying shaped Ben. I don't give a fuck about how bullying shaped Ben. Talk about politics. What are you here for? What is this? What's this question? Bannon and the birth of the right wing. Okay, here we go. Let's get into some juicy shit. Let's do it.
Started then to not only identify yourself in the context of your intellectual pursuits and expressing your point of view through writing, also sort of gifted capacity to engage in debate and speech. But then you found Andrew Breitbart. Was out and about in Southern California, and you took a job there working at Breitbart.
That happened in 2012 during the 2012 election. I joined Breitbart. I'd known Andrew actually since my UCLA days, so I'd known him already for quite a number of years.
What do you think of Andrew? There's a lot of
Andrew's kick. Andrew. So I think that there's sort of I mean, you're in public life, so there's for a lot of people, there's sort of like the private person, and there's the public person. They're not quite the same. So Andrew, the private person, and the public person were actually very much the same. I would say up until the end. Toward the end, I think that Andrew became very frustrated with a lot of the political system, media coverage. But the truth is that Andrew was, for the vast majority of the time I knew him, very garrulous, willing to have conversations with nearly anyone. I think that if you talk to people who knew Andrew really well, their best memories of him are things like him just rollerblading in Venice and then just having like political conversations, taking somebody to coffee, like a random person. What I used to say to people about Andrew is that I knew Andrew for over a decade before he passed away. And if you knew Andrew for 5 minutes, you knew him about 95% as well as I did, because he was just very much there. Like, he was just on the surface. Everything that what you saw is what you got with Andrew. So yeah, I joined Breitbart in about 2012. It was during the Romney Obama election. Entrepreneurs and localities working with ICE. California is a sanctuary state, which makes it much more difficult for local law enforcement to entrepreneurs and localities received it that way. Now, this immediately broke down into two separate narratives, both of which I think are untrue. One was a narrative.
What do you mean?
Okay, they're about to get into podcasters, because I'm gonna be honest, this whole yapping about how did you get into politics, Gavin? I don't give a fuck. Your constituents don't give two shits on how Ben Shapiro got into politics. Why are you asking these boring ass fucking questions? What are we doing, Newsom? Like, this is what pisses people off. What are we doing? I hate this guy, Ben Shapiro. I think Ben Shapiro is very weaselly, personally.
Think of the current media landscape. I mean, it seems to be the sort of dialectic between the old and the new, sort of the digital first, and these legacy media companies, and obviously podcasts becoming at least part of the nomenclature. It's a conversation. I don't know. We can get into the merits of overstating, over-indexing podcast influence. But so much of what you seeded and influenced in terms of the right-wing media, even in now in some respects, what folks are trying to replicate with more progressive media voices. What do you make of the landscape today? How would you describe the current landscape?
I mean, highly fragmented. I think in some ways that's good. I think in some ways that's bad. It's had tremendous benefits in the sense that you don't have three networks and you have to rely on just those three networks. You can in real time fact check things. It's bad in the sense that while gatekeeping is difficult and obviously can silo off information that you need to have, if you have people who are algorithmically driven, who are desperate for clicks and desperate for attention and don't seem to care very much about the truth, and if there's kind of no pushback, then bad information can spin its way around very, very quickly. And it doesn't take long for people to draw extremely hard narratives about, I would say, convoluted sets of facts.
Yep.
And I think that, frankly, politicians sometimes have a position in doing this, because if you're catering to a base, and obviously, and everybody has to be aware of audience capture in my industry, in politics, you have to be very aware of audience capture because you need to win votes. But I mean, just to take as a recent example, what happened in Minneapolis, I think that the normie response to what happened in Minneapolis is, this is obviously a tragedy from a sort of legal perspective. Putting on my lawyer hat, the intent of Renee Good is not relevant to the question of the intent of the officer. Right? If you're gonna prosecute the officer, then you'd have to determine whether an objective, reasonable officer would have perceived that he was being threatened by her vehicle when he shot her. And it seems to me that you could voice a fairly strong defense in a court of law that an objectively reasonable officer, since he actually was nudged with the car at the very least, would have perceived it that way. Now, this immediately broke down into two separate narratives, both of which I think are untrue. One was a narrative that was immediately pushed by the Trump administration and Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, that she was a domestic terrorist who was attempting to run over officers with her car and was legitimately trying, not just this officer, but multiple officers. That was the original statement. I said at the time, I thought that was untrue. And then your press office tweeted out that it was state-sponsored terrorism, which, I mean, Governor, I just have to ask you about that. That sort of thing makes our politics worse. Yeah. I mean, it does. Yeah. I mean, our ICE.
Okay. Ben Shapiro is correct on his analysis. It's interesting that he's calling out Trump here. Is he calling out Trump because the MAGA movement has been turning on him, or is he calling out Trump because he has integrity? What is the answer? What is the answer? What is the answer? That's the question. That is the question indeed. Moss has to go. It's a really complicated issue, not as black as white as both far lefties and conservatives think it is. I agree with you, Patty. I've said that multiple times. It's a very complex issue, very complicated history. But one thing that's undeniable is Netanyahu's unhinged, and his far-right Israeli government inside the Israel government is unhinged for sure. His voice is unbearable, sped up. I'm so all right. I'll turn off the speed. I'll turn off the 1.25 because Ben Shapiro talks fast as fuck. To be fair, I like it because my brain is fucked. So, but I'll also have respect for Shapiro when he took back his statements on January 6th. Yeah, Ben Shapiro is a fucking coward. Absolutely. Ben is correct about what he said, and him calling out. This is like at a astute analysis. I don't respect him because he's willing to move the goalposts depending on who he wants to support.
Officers obviously are not terrorists.
Yeah.
A tragic situation is not state-sponsored terrorism.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, when it comes to ICE, I mean, I'll ask you this just generally about policy with regard to ICE, because obviously it's become incredibly contentious given what the federal government is doing in states like California. It seems to me that there have been a number of deportations from red states, right, where there are governors and localities working with ICE. California is a sanctuary state, which makes it much more difficult for local law enforcement to hand over information to ICE about deportation status. What's the purpose of that? Wouldn't best policy, you're pragmatic, you talk about your pragmatism all the time. Wouldn't best policy be to cooperate with ICE in the vast majority of cases? So instead of ICE going to, as you say, hospitals and churches to pick people up, they'd be going to jailhouses to pick people up.
That's exactly what they do in California. And we have over 10,000 that I've cooperated with since I've been governor of California. We work very directly with ICE as it relates to CDCR, our state prison. California has cooperated with more ICE transfers probably than any other state in the country. And I vetoed multiple pieces of legislation that have come from my legislature to stop the ability for the state of California to do that. So when it comes to the issues of violent criminals, when it comes to felons, people that are being released from the largest state system in the United States of America, California cooperates with ICE.
Okay, but why is it then? What makes it a sanctuary state?
That was a really good response. That's a response that's going to really help you win a vote, because you say very clearly that, oh, we're not anti-ICE. We actually work with them a lot. Matter of fact, we work with them the most because we want to get criminals out of the country. That's a really good response to that. Okay, Gavin Newsom. And now he's going to follow up. Okay, even though we help get criminals out, why are you a sanctuary state? Let's see if it gives another really good response. Okay, let's hear it.
The broader sanctuary policies that are established, and we had policy was established under Governor Brown, SB 54. You have city sanctuary policies that go back quite literally to the time Ronald Reagan was governor, as relates to some of the issues in Central America, sort of the origin stories. But at bottom line, as it relates to those policies, this notion that federal law should be enforced by federal law enforcement agencies, that we should not consign local law enforcement to federal responsibilities and prioritization.
Right, but shouldn't the state step in with localities and tell localities that they ought to cooperate better with ICE, thus to facilitate?
Well, I have sort of Rudy Giuliani's point of view, who made the point as an advocate for sanctuary policy when he was mayor of New York. He said it keeps people safer, healthier, and more educated. Safer in the context that it allows community members to be more likely to participate as witnesses of crime or victims of crime in going after the perpetrators. More
Gary responsible for more fraud than Somali Pirates base. You're cooking. You're a genius. There are other packs too. There are other packs, Patty, but like APAC related to Israel. Everybody hates Israel nowadays, so it's like that means APAC is evil. It's a very simplistic way of thinking about this, but now we have this huge anti-Israel movement that's happening, and it's just like, it's just at this point, there's no really point in continuously kind of engaging with that. These people feel the way they feel about Israel. Some people extend it to the point where they kind of feel the same way about not only Israel, but all Jewish people. It's pretty nasty. It's very unfortunate.
Likely to get an immunization shot if they're not worried about the nurse turning them over to ICE, more likely to go to school and get educated if they're not worried about the school crossing guard crossing them and ultimately turning them over to ICE. So it's the tool of pragmatism because of the complete abject failure of the federal government. Sanctuary policy is unnecessary if we had comprehensive immigration reform and we had a federal response that was adequate to the task. But in the absence of that, it's grown from the 70s and 80s and 90s, 2000s, and obviously I got here as governor and we had an established framework before I got here.
But it is true that sanctuary policy obviously has had a massive impact as a driver of tremendous number of illegal immigrants in the state of California.
I don't know about that. I mean, you see in a lot of states that don't have sanctuary policies, huge increase in immigration, illegal immigration, massive increases, even far greater than the state of California. Just look as an example. But in terms of the
cost structure, I mean, you recently, for example, had to freeze the enrollment of undocumented immigrants in state health systems to save money, right? I mean, these are major burdens. No,
that's a separate issue. There are 12 states that provide health care for undocs, and we believe in universal health care regardless of pre-existing conditions.
My only point is that the cost structure is extraordinarily burdensome.
But I don't think it's in unpacking it, I don't think it's the sanctuary policies that are driving that. And I'll give you a proof point. Florida doesn't have sanctuary policy, huge increase in undocumented community, huge increase in Texas. It's not a driver, their sanctuary policies. They don't have sanctuary policies in those states. The state of California's policies, I don't think in that respect have invited people into our state. And I use those as, I think, proof points of that. And that's a different, so the notion of.
So the claim that he made, which is a very interesting one, is that there are some people that try to use the concept that sanctuary cities are protections that kind of incentivize illegal immigrants to come to the nation. And his claim is that Florida and Texas don't have sanctuary policies, but they have more illegal immigrants go there than California. I mean, fair. It's also the easiest access point, to be fair, as well, being Texas and Florida being like southern locales. But ultimately, the biggest driver is them wanting to be in America, and they'll get there no matter what, regardless if it's a sanctuary city or not. So it's just not a really strong point. They'll go to wherever they got to go to, the best access point. And the best access points will be like southern states like Texas and Florida. So, you know, I'm anti-Semitic, and that goes for all those who are challenged in a foreskin manner. Challenge in a foreskin manner is actually crazy. It's actually kind of funny. Anti-Semitism, but that's funny.
How do you deal with people that are here 10, 15 years?
California has a southern border too. You're probably right, but the clearest access points I think is Texas and Florida. I'm not really making that a point against California. I'm just saying that the point is they will do whatever it takes to get into the country, regardless if you have sanctuary policy or not. So that basically just debunks the point that they're coming in for sanctuary cities. That's just not a strong point to make.
How do you deal with mixed status families in this state? And how do you provide for health care as opposed to emergency care?
So companies do hire illegals. It's just not some take advantage. I agree. But they don't lower wages. There's really no evidence of them lower wages. Matter of fact, there's more evidence that not illegal immigrants, but immigrants with work visas, they raise wages. They add more jobs to the company. There's more evidence to that. No, but that does not excuse companies hiring illegals with lower wage. That doesn't excuse that by any means. I actually had a podcast episode with immigration lawyer, and he thinks that one of the things we probably should do is give out more work visas. So these people who are coming in to work into the country, they will get paid the amount that they deserve. They won't get the lower wages that you're referring to. That does happen. That way, like, this issue that you're referring to doesn't happen. It's not a huge issue, like, statistically, but there shouldn't be a situation where these, like, companies are taking advantage of them, period. And if they're under a work visa, they have to pay for them. They have to pay for their health care and all that other stuff too. So he believes that we should have more work visas personally. I think that's an interesting point.
And stabilize populations and community health. It's a different approach. It's one that we've been very transparent about. And it's one that's hardly unique because in every state, they provide compensated care for undocs at the emergency room. Many states provide it for children, many for seniors. California provides it across the board.
I mean, the biggest problem, though,
I think Americans and migrants should get paid more. I'm not against immigration. I think we need to pay people to have kids. I'm with you, Skate. I think there should be a very good conversation in terms of, like, raising wages. I think that's also a very interesting point that I agree with instinctually, that I can make a very, like, logical argument from that. More wages would incentivize more kids, because I believe in, like, what is it, either in the next, like, 10 years, I believe America's going to reach the point where our birth rate is going to start declining. So that means more people will start dying than people are getting born. So we're going to start having the point where the population is going to start declining. So that is a big issue that we probably should pay attention to. More and more people are not having kids. And to be fair, like, I'm at an old age. I don't have kids. To be fair, I'm very busy. I have friends, and my sister has a kid, but having more money really incentivizes you to have kids for sure. People have, not literally, Caleb, to pay people to have kids, but if people have more money in their bank account, there's more incentive to start a family. That's the point. Not, hey, go fuck someone, here's money. That's not what he's talking about. That's not what he's talking about.
As somebody who left the state, is that the cost structure in the state has become...
Wealthy people aren't hoarders. You see how many kids Elon Musk has? The only reason why he can have so much kids is because he fucked Nick Cannon. He'd be having kids off the wazoo.
So burdensome, not just because of illegal immigration, but generally. And so the idea that policy has no impact as a magnet for particular human behavior or alienating people from a state, that's clearly untrue.
Yeah,
and when you look at the homeless population, for example, friendlier policies toward providing services in Santa Monica
separate point, though. But that now
yes.
And the majority of Jewish people want a Jewish state. That's true. That's true. I don't know what you guys are debating about, but that's just true.
Getting a homeless policy, not immigration policy.
No, but I want to stick with
up
immigration policy.
No, I want to.
Policy has no impact.
Many states provide it for children, many for seniors. California provides it across the board.
I mean, the biggest problem, though, as somebody who left the state, is that the cost structure in the state has become so burdensome, not just because of illegal immigration, but generally. And so the idea that policy has no impact as a magnet for particular human behavior or alienating people from a state, that's clearly untrue. And when you look at the homeless population, for example, friendlier policies toward providing services in Santa Monica
Separate
led to
point, though. But that, now
Yes.
you're getting a homeless policy, not immigration policy.
No,
but
but,
I
if we
want to
stick
back up.
with immigration policy.
No,
If you make it easier for illegal immigrants,
But let's stick with immigration
not to
policy.
avoid ICE, then presumably.
No, look, I appreciate this. So we've established an important. I appreciate the question because I'm glad we've established that we do.
They're talking policy. You don't see this very often. This is actually really trying to understand Newsom's thought process and the policies he's implemented for California. And this is a good litmus test to see if he can articulate how his policies like affect Californians once he runs for president, because this is very important. Communication is extremely valuable.
Cooperate with ICE in California, in particular this governor who's, as I said, on multiple occasions vetoed efforts to stop me from that coordination for dangerous criminals. And we've done that over 10,000 vetoed efforts in California, in particular this governor who's, as I said, on multiple occasions vetoed efforts to stop me from that coordination for dangerous criminals. And we've done that over 10,000 folks.
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to stand up. My legs are starting to hurt. It's just, well, I've been sitting for too long, so now my legs are starting to hurt. Oh, let's stand up. All right, standing up.
So it'd be wrong for. So when AOC said this week that ICE should be abolished, you disagree?
Oh, I disagree. When I think a candidate for president by the name of Harris said that in the last campaign. I came out. I remember being on Chris Hayes hours later saying, I think that's a mistake. So absolutely. Number two, as it relates to the issue of sanctuary policy, I think it's important to establish, because it's not well established, sanctuary jurisdictions have lower crime rates than non-sanctuary jurisdictions. So this notion that it somehow increases crime is also, I think, contradicted on the basis of the facts. So this notion that population, it becomes an attractive nature for population increases, I think, is contradicted by the facts. As it relates to crime, it's contradicted by the facts, but there's unquestionably, and you're right about this, as it relates to an expansion of services, but not just for sanctuary jurisdictions, for population, diverse populations. Yes, there are states like California that have chosen a different approach.
And that approach, I mean, means that when you came into office, for example, the budget was what, $200 billion, and your proposed budget last year or this year is $350 billion. You went from a surplus.
The general fund's $248 billion. We have $42.3 billion additional revenue structure than we anticipated. By the way, another 2.8 came in December. And California is now replenishing its reserves, $23 billion, paying down pension obligations, $11.8 billion. There's no question there are cost pressures as it relates to Medicaid, and Medi-Cal in California. And those pressures are going to be made worse because of the big, beautiful bill.
Well, I mean, I think that the main pressures in the state of
California,
in terms of kind of future costs, looks like some of the programs that you mentioned, mainly.
Where's the money, Gavin? I mean, I think he just said where the money's going to, right?
Diverse populations. Yes, there are states like California that have chosen a different approach.
And that approach, I mean, means that when you came into office, for example, the
oil company shutting down, leaving because of this asshat. That doesn't really mean much, considering California has an economy larger than Japan, so it's not really affecting them, huh?
Budget was what, $200 billion, and your proposed budget last year or this year is $350 billion. You went from a surplus.
The general fund's $248 billion. We have $42.3 billion additional revenue structure than we anticipated. By the way, another 2.8 came in December. And California is now replenishing its reserves, $23 billion, paying down pension obligations, $11.8 billion. There's no question there are cost pressures as it relates to Medicaid, and Medi-Cal in California. And those pressures are going to be made worse because of the big, beautiful.
He's so dodgy. How is he dodging? He answered the question. What do you mean he's dodgy? Maybe I'm tripping. Let me hear this again. I don't know how he's dodgy. He's answering the question.
A candidate for president by the name of Harris said that in the last campaign. I came out. I remember being on Chris Hayes hours later saying, I think that's a mistake. So absolutely. Number two, as it relates to the issue of sanctuary policy, I think it's important to establish, because it's not well established, sanctuary jurisdictions have lower crime rates than non-sanctuary jurisdictions. So this notion that it somehow increases crime is also, I think, contradicted on the basis of the facts. So this notion that population, it becomes an attractive nature for population increases, I think, is contradicted by the facts. As it relates to crime, it's contradicted by the facts. But there's unquestionably, and you're right about this, as it relates to an expansion of services, but not just for sanctuary jurisdictions, for population, diverse populations. Yes, there are states like California that have chosen a different approach.
And that approach, I mean, means that when you came into office, for example, the budget was what, $200 billion, and your proposed budget last.
So now they're talking about the idea of like the budget and the amount of money they're spending on these people, right? And they're talking about like immigrants, they're talking about diverse population. So he's referring to like marginalized communities and why and how they spend money on them. I'm curious to see if they go in depth with it. Their budget. So
this year is $350 billion.
240. The general fund's $248 billion. We have $42.3 billion additional revenue structure than we anticipated. By the way, another 2.8 came in December, and California is now replenishing its reserves, $23 billion, paying down pension obligations, $11.8 billion. There's no question there are cost pressures as it relates to Medicaid, and Medi-Cal in California, and those pressures are going to be made worse because of the big beautiful bill.
Well, I mean, I think that the main pressures in the state of California, in terms of kind of future costs, looks like some of the programs that you mentioned. Mainly, if we're going to look at it, CalPERS, CalSTARS, the fact that you have perhaps $500 billion in unfunded liabilities.
You know, one of these days, maybe for a future podcast episode, I want to dive into the conversation on like the homelessness issue. And the criticism for Newsom that I would be interested enough to talk to him about is like, why do you have so much homelessness in California? Now, the obvious answer to that is because California has such a large population, right? New York and California have all big cities have a homelessness problem. Atlanta has a homelessness problem, San Francisco, New York City, like they all have a homelessness problem. I would be curious to like why that is. Is that consistent for all big cities? More than likely. I bet the biggest city in Texas, what is it, Houston or Dallas, probably has a homelessness issue. Every single one of them do. But I'll be curious on like what that is, how they plan to solve it, what have they done that has worked or not worked. I'll probably do a podcast episode about it in the future. All big cities are blue because at the end of the day, these cities' blue policies are better, so that's why they end up big cities. That's why.
He's going forward.
Well, in which we've substantially improved in the last 7 years. I just mentioned the $11.8 billion commitment. We've highlighted that in the State of the State to pay down long-term pension obligations. STRS and PERS, their funded liability has been improving over the last 5 or 6 years. Commitment. We've highlighted that in the State of the State to the last 7 years.
Liabilities going forward.
Well, in which we've substantially improved in the last 7 years. I just mentioned the $11.8 billion commitment. We've highlighted that in the State of the State to pay down long-term pension obligations. STRS and PERS, their funded liability has been improving over the last 5 or 6 years. Can make up for the last 30 years. You may recall a decade plus ago, we did reforms for new employees moving in. We dealt with spiking and other issues and abuses in that space. We're hardly unique in this country as it relates to unfunded liability.
Or fraud issues, obviously.
And fraud issues. We can talk about fraud all day. I'd love to talk about that, and we could get back to that because I think it's an incredibly important topic. And California's been actually out front on a lot of these anti-fraud efforts. And I think there's a lot of BS in this space as it relates to sort of targeted assaults and offense that obviously are big, they're pain our project. But I want to go back because we're going to get all of this. I know everyone came here for all this stuff.
Of course. Before we do, I just want to ask, there's sort of a general take that I have, and that is.
So Newsom's basic premise here, to be fair to Newsom here, going into detail on like all the individual like issues for California would take a long time. I'm interested in it. I think he should take the time to do it. I think he should really extrapolate what he's doing. I think more politicians should do that. Honestly, do it on a podcast format. Fuck. If Sean Ryan can have 6-hour podcast episodes, Newsom, you figure it the fuck out because you want the people to hear and understand, right? The most important thing right now is hearing and understand. These people need to understand what you're doing and why it's good. From my understanding on what Newsom is referring to is like a lot of the policies that have been is like improvements the moment he took office from a damaged system. Now, how much do I buy that? I would really have to get into the nitty gritty on like how much have been improving. Of course, California's economy has been growing for years now. That's just objectively true. But I would just have to really get into the nitty gritty on like some of the things he's done, whether and the potency of them in general. There's just more questions I would have. I probably would go into it. Chad Bianco is leading the polls in California. He is for governor. I think you're making that up. Let's look at it. I think you're just making that up. Governor, California. Governor polls. Let's look that up. 5th largest economy. California's economy is ridiculous. Like I said, its economy is larger than Japan. So I don't know what. The open all-party primary for governor. So what is this? These are all polls. All right. So in this poll, Hilton's leading. This one, Hilton's leading. Emerson College poll, Bianco's leading. Public Policy Institute of California, Porter's leading. This one, Bianco's leading. This one's Bianco's leading. This one's Democrats leading. Hilton's leading. Democrat plus 20, by the way. Porter plus 7, by the way. Hilton, Bianco, Padilla, Hilton, Porter, Hilton, Porter. I'm not gonna lie. You saying Bianco is leading? I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at all these polls. I don't know. I feel like if we add it all up, it skews Democrat. I don't know. Maybe I'm tripping, but it's pretty clear that it skews Democrat. See if they am, but with all these companies pulling out within the next year, it's going to hurt the state. I don't think California's worried, to be honest.
So I heard the podcast he did with Ezra Klein. I think Ezra's wonderful. You know, he and I disagree about nearly everything, and I think Ezra's really, really a fascinating person with a lot of really interesting
point, Devious.
And he talked with you a lot about sort of governance, and you talked with him a lot about how you were trying to remove regulatory barriers to, for example,
ex-Democrats will use the cheating they were taught about base. You can't count on polls. I only looked at polls because someone said Bianco was leading. That's all that happened here. I just looked at the polls. He said Bianco was leading. I didn't believe him, so I looked it up.
Building units, right? Because when you came into office, you wanted to build, I believe it was 3.5 million units.
That was the stated need,
right?
Then we created a legal framework of 2.5 million,
and it will come up way short of that.
Okay, what did Ben Shapiro ask?
Gavin with he and I will take that I have, and that is. So I heard the podcast he did with that.
And I think there's a lot of BS in this space as it relates to sort of targeted assaults and offense that obviously are pain our politics. But I want to go back because we're going to get all of this. I know everyone came here for all this stuff.
Of course. Before we do, I just want to ask, there's sort of a general take that I have, and that is, so I heard the podcast he did with Ezra Klein. I think Ezra's wonderful. He and I disagree about nearly everything, and I think Ezra's really, really a fascinating person with a lot of really interesting and heterodox ideas. And he talked with you a lot about sort of governance, and you talked with him a lot about how you were trying to remove regulatory barriers to, for example, building units, right? Because when you came into office, you wanted to build, I believe it was 3.5 million units.
That was the stated need,
right?
Then we created,
for example, building units, right? Because
now they're talking about building homes. Okay, now we're locked in. I gotta pay attention. I'm looking at the chat and the thing at the same time.
When you came into office, you wanted to build, I believe it was 3.5 million units.
That was the stated need,
right? The
and
stated need.
then we created a legal framework of 2.5 million,
and it will come up way short of that. It's like 2030. And what is it? About 150,000 units that are being created.
Little less than 150,000. You're right, about 111, 108,000.
And this isn't a rip on you. I mean, because
it's been a major national issue, and the macroeconomics of this with interest rate environment, sort of post-COVID environment, made this housing crisis across the country.
Although to be fair, the housing crisis in California is particularly bad. I mean, there are places like Phoenix or Austin or there's
Bianco is now second behind Hilton by 1.7. Okay. Gotcha. I mean, I looked at the poll, so whatever that says, it said the Democrat was leading. So
the original, I said yesterday or last week in the United States, the original sin.
Ezra is trash, really? I've heard a lot of good things. I think I got, hold on, let me check. I've yet to read it, but I did get the Abundance book. I haven't read it yet. Everybody was talking about it, so I did want to get it. I haven't had time to kind of really read it. I have books back there from like what a lot of those books are books that are sent to me by my guests from my podcast. So I haven't had really a lot of time to read it, but Ezra's trash. I do think sometimes I hear him, he kind of like is a little bit too centristy for me, but I don't know. I heard some good things about abundance and cutting regulation and whatnot. Been surprisingly interesting later, Gators. Patty, later. Have a good one. Patty, you're cooking. Hey, man, a lot of MAGA. They be trolling. Ezra Klein pushes for Schumer-like positions, mainly Shillong for corporate Dems. Really? You don't think abundance, the idea of like building more homes? Because my understanding, I haven't read the book yet. My understanding is he wants to build more homes and cut like regulation, like certain regulations to expedite home building. That's definitely less of a corporate Dem policy. That's definitely more, I guess, anti-corporatism, because you would assume that like kind of the idea of corporatism is for the regulations to exist. So Trump deranged homosexuals are sad. Hey, Trump deranged homosexuals they're interesting enigmas. I'll say that. I think Dems are just trying to find a winning message, not to help Americans. I don't agree to that at all. Men, you have to listen. Remember the men of the past. They were strong. They didn't let anybody stomp on them. Men, it's time to be strong. It's time to be the men that you need to be. Yeah, be the men that you need to be, not like fat orange pedophile rapists like Donald Trump. I killed that one. That was a good one, right? I killed that one. You heard about Project Rust in California? I have not heard about Project Rust in California. I have spoken recently from someone who's like a political advocate. He came on my podcast. We talked. He's a political advocate. He advocates for going against like the NIMBYs, which is like not in my yard, not in my backyard type people, to try to like incentivize more home building. So that is what he's been advocating for as of right now. Do flavor condoms make your farts smell fruitier? Couldn't say. Maybe. You know what? I've only done anal with one girl, so never smelled her farts. So couldn't tell you. Ezra also said to throw trans under the bus and bend over to the rights for votes. Did he? I've heard something about that. I just don't know exactly what he said, so I can't really ask Benny Johnson. Can't really say. Oh, ask Benny Johnson? Facts, actually. Ask Benny Johnson. Ask Benny Johnson and ask Mac Knowles. For sure.
Our inability to get out of our own way on all the regulatory thickets.
Right. So
we blew through those in the last couple of years. 61 housing reform bills we just passed. And Ezra was highlighting that. Interesting. Yes. New York just moved in a direction. I think finally we Democrats broadly are moving now finally in the right damn direction after decades and decades. Democrats and Republicans in California neglect in this space.
Right. And I think that one of the problems that people see, and there's been a.
So he's saying California is trying to build more homes right now, really focusing on pushing more home building. And New York is doing it too. Mamdani is making it a plan of action for him to build more homes as well. So, I mean, interesting. To be fair, the only people I've heard about building homes, the only people I've heard advocate for that are Dems. So,
big question. You've asked it. You've talked about it a lot, actually, about the frustration that people have with politics and the disenchantment that people have.
Both of them. Michael Knowles is the only one that isn't gay here. Are you sure about that? You sure Michael Knowles isn't a closeted gay man? You sure he's not like Butter's father in South Park where he visits certain clubs? You sure about that?
Have and the feeling that no matter what they do, they can't get ahead. And that's manifesting in a lot of political polarization. And this gets to, I think, a sort of broader issue. It's not just you. So I don't mean this to be a specific critique of you. I think it's a critique of a lot of politicians that I have left and right. Yeah. And that is, you look at the system, you realize as the governor how complex the system is, how difficult it is to get things done, how much gridlock there is in the system. But politicians...
California shut over 100 gas stations because of the project. I would have to look into it. I don't really know what you're referring to, Bravo. I can't speak with confidence whether or not you're telling me correctly, or like there's more context I would have to consider. I'm not sure. I have no idea. I don't have a comment on that. When you blow a guy, do you maintain eye contact or do you just close your eyes and think about one of your stepdads? Never blown a guy myself, so I wouldn't know. And also, I don't have a stepdad, so I wouldn't know that about that either. As of right now, I don't think I have a stepdad. I don't think my mother married some other guy.
In order to get elected, have to make a lot of promises about how much things are going to change in the future. Yep. And they usually are talking about using the power of government in order to facilitate and make that change happen, particularly on the Democratic side of the aisle. And it seems to me that that is a recipe for disaster for the American body politic, because if you make promises that cannot be fulfilled because the system does not allow for it to be fulfilled, people inherently end up frustrated. And, I have relatives who still live in the state of California. I visit it routinely, and they're making a very good living. Right? I have a sister-in-law and brother-in-law who live in LA. They make a combined excellent living, and they're barely making their mortgage. And the housing costs are too high. The cost of living is too high. I believe the poverty rates in California on a cost adjusted basis are some of the highest in the nation.
Right there with Florida, correct. When you look at the supplemental poverty index, when you look at poverty broadly defined, it's slightly above average. Supplemental, Florida and California, right?
If you're looking at real estate costs in particular are extraordinary in the state of California. And as you say, you're trying to remove regulations, but the problem is that unless we are willing to recognize a fundamental reality, which is that the relationship of the American people with their government needs to change.
I agree with that.
And what that means is that we need to radically remove the regulatory structures that allow for more building, that we need to radically stop perverting markets when it comes to how we make housing policy, that we need to stop wasting money in taxpayer funding on things like, for example, a gigantic, you once called it a boondoggle, high-speed rail that is going to cost in excess of $100 billion in this state. Right. The guarantee, and again, I see it rising on the populist right too, which is.
Well, high-speed rail is more like, is the investment worth it? Like once it's implemented, will it kind of like close the gap of transportation and travel to the point where more things can go through, which will like help with time efficiency, will help with like work and transportation. Hard to say. It's really an investment project. It could be good, it could be bad, depending on how it's used, for sure. New Yorkers are so pissed and calling him a liar. That Jasper, I mean, that's just not true. Plus, he just got into office. Coming to conclusions with Mamdani, who's sworn in like 2 weeks ago, is interesting. Plus, he's done quite a bit the moment he was sworn in. So I don't know what you're talking about, Jasper. I'm not gonna lie. Gavin has the state with the highest state budget, but is the highest in homelessness. I'll look that up again. All big cities have high in homelessness. That's just a normal thing. Big cities have a lot of homeless problem. all around,
sort
all
of a
around
big
the
government
world.
right, which is something I object to on a sort of classically conservative level. The promises that are made that if you give government more power and more taxpayer revenue, that suddenly these problems are going to be alleviated. And the actual result, which is less ability to do what my parents did, to move from a 2-bedroom small house in Burbank to a 4-bedroom, slightly larger house in North Hollywood. And then for me to go to a great state school like UCLA, and then for me to go to Harvard Law School, and now to have a really, really nice house. You know, I did have a nice house in California before we left, obviously. You know, those obstacles need to be
Well, you sound like me. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we can get high-speed rail aside. You made my speech and my argument last 3 years in terms of the housing reform.
Of course, he signed the recent like executive action to implement the. Like, he's doing a lot of stuff. Do you support communism? No, communism is bad. I do not support communism.
Reforms we pursued. Could not agree more. I highlighted the 61 bills just last year. I didn't highlight the 42 CEQA reform bills. The original, talk about process and regulatory thickets. Those environmental rules that were established, ironically, by Ronald Reagan himself when he was governor of California. So we've been in the process of doing precisely what you're suggesting we need to do, and we've been doing it very meaningfully and been nation-leading reforms in this space. Now, of course, the private sector.
Big cities are blue because blue policies create big cities. Yes, that's how it works.
Needs to catch up in the context of interest rate environment becoming more favorable. But now we are cities and counties we put on notice. May you recall when I first became governor, I sued Huntington Beach, the first city, because they were out of compliance with their housing element. We established a legally binding goal of 2.5 million units. We talked about the stretch goal. What needed to get some equilibrium in our prices, the supply-demand imbalance, but we created a legally binding goal of 2.5 million.
So what could be done to make that happen in not Huntington Beach, but LA, San Francisco?
We created a housing accountability unit. We pursued 46 actions. We've unlocked.
Right, but I guess the question is from like the common man perspective, right? From my perspective, where I left, I took my business, right?
Yeah.
From that perspective, how do we get to the material change? And if we cannot, then perhaps that requires a complete rethink. Now, come over to my classical libertarian economics here, Governor, is I guess what I'm saying, and maybe recognize that the amount of tax revenue that's taken in the state perverts the market incentives. That what's been generated in the state is a middle class that is really struggling. Vast social services for people who are at poverty line or below and slightly above. And then, a group of people who are either so wealthy they don't care or so wealthy now they're leaving, right? Because of the prospective wealth tax, which I know you oppose, right? You understand markets. So that's why I'm always a little bit bewildered when there are measures taken by the state legislature that end up perverting markets in fairly serious ways.
Well, we can get into the crony capitalism, state capitalism, and the tithings from NVIDIA and AMD and what's going on with Intel and what's happening with the Trump administration in that respect. But I agree with you broadly in all this. I mean, the fact is we've been tackling all. I can't make up for 50, 60 years. And you're talking about literally a 50-year trend line as it relates to the issues of cost of housing affordability. But I can talk in terms of the substantive actions we've taken, tripling their income tax credits for working families, creating a child tax credit, foster tax credit, doing more as it relates to pre-distribution opportunities.
How about radically lowering the income tax rates in the
state? California has tax. I mean, there's 16 states right now. Let's talk about those 16 states.
Why don't we talk about California? That's
I'm going to that tax their low-wage earners more than California taxes its high-wage earners. Let's talk about lowering those tax rates in those 16 states. How about the middle class? 40% of the middle class in Texas pay higher taxes than they do in California. We have the highest tax rate for the 1%, but the overall tax burden, and there's been independent analysis.
This is a very interesting point that he's making right here. This is a very interesting point he's making when he's talking about taxes. Again, this is stuff that he needs to really nail down once he's president, because the answer is yes, our tax rate is high, but our tax rate is high for the extremely wealthy. If we do a comparative analysis to other states, those people who are getting taxed from the middle class or from the poor poverty levels, their tax rates are ridiculous and way higher than ours. We tax to help the common man. We tax to put it on the rich. That's a very astute claim and analysis, not a stupid analysis, but that's a very, what's the word I want to use? Not powerful, not buoyant. Maybe buoyant is a good word for it. Claim to use to showcase the kind of differences and change the outlook of California's tax system. It's a very interesting point. Very interesting point indeed. Ronnie mad. Boo-hoo, Ronnie. Boo-hoo. Oh, these people don't understand the comparative analysis. Hey, man, MAGA, like, educate yourself a little bit. Come on now. Educate yourself a little bit here. Come on. Be a little bit smarter. Go to school a little bit.
After independent analysis is marginally higher than the national average.
Okay.
So the tax rate for the 1%, you're in that bubble. But 99% empirically are not.
As a person who grew up in California and spent my entire career in California, I paid every single tax rate in the state of California. I started off making, when I first got out of school and I'd quit the law firm, I was making maybe 60.
You spelled trader wrong, Ronnie. Are you from Russia or are you from China? I think you're like English, you're Russian or Chinese to English translation is failing you. You're doing a bad job and being a MAGA stooge. You got to translate better with Google Translate. You spelled trader wrong. You know what I'm saying? Do better. You believe Newsom, base. It's true. He's destroyed California while we're still paying high price for gas, and people in Arizona are paying like $2. That's not how gas works.
$grand a year.
So you started out paying less than you would in a dozen plus other states.
And I didn't.
It's a progressive tax state.
I understand it's a progressive tax state.
Yeah.
The problem is that when I left, I also took 80 employees.
Yeah.
And there's somebody who's got to pay the bills for those employees.
Yeah.
And that's typically not the state, the person who is paying the bills for the employees. And the person
that's the guy who's created by the way, you're talking to a guy who started right out of college, pen to paper, and started 23 small businesses. Literally 23. Created almost 1,000 jobs.
So you know, as a person who ran a small business, you wanted to pay salaries to your people.
Honored.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, it's not about the greed of the one person. I'm the same person that
I hated a lot of the regulations.
Spell trader wrong again, Ronnie. Do better.
And having to fire people because of that stuff.
Use a better Google Translate.
And losing your profit margin, which allows you to hire more people, is a bad thing. And when you are seeing, I mean, I've talked to major tech founders who say today,
what do I trade? I trade knowledge, man. I trade knowledge. So Ben Shapiro's claim that the 1% should tax rate, I just don't buy the idea of like the 1% struggling to pay their employees because of the taxes. I don't buy it. You're not selling me. I'm not really interested in hearing that. You have plenty of money. You can pay your employees and you can pay your taxes. You can do both. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that from the 1%. Sorry.
that they would not, if they had to do it over again, they would not found in California, specifically because of the regulatory and tax structure.
Well, let's talk about the largest startup in world history. Could have chosen any place to open its headquarters. Just recently, OpenAI and the folks there decided to open in San Francisco. I mean, it runs.
That's where the talent is. I mean, there's no question.
Therein lies the formula for success. California has more Fortune 500 companies than it's ever had in 20 plus years.
To be fair, you have 40 million people who live here.
Well, hold on. But 4 years ago, that wasn't the case. Today, it's the case. We have 58 Fortune 500 companies. When I started, it was 49. We're the sixth largest economy. Now we're the fourth largest economy.
Damn, he's talking his shit, Gavin. He's saying, yeah, I'm raising your taxes, bitch, and you coming here anyway. I'm raising your taxes. Who gives a fuck? You still coming, aren't you? That's why we have more Fortune 500 companies. That's why our economy is one of the largest in the world. So you can complain and complain and complain. You coming back for more anyway. All right, Gavin, talk your shit a little bit, okay?
You look at the 3.1 million jobs that have been created since I've been governor. You can look across the spectrum. I'm not denying its challenges, but those persist and exist in every other state. You move to a state that has higher insurance rate, higher car insurance, not just home insurance, has higher property taxes. Many of these red states, they have higher murder rates, lower wages, lower productivity, less innovation and entrepreneurialism. They're less contributory to the GDP of this country.
So, I mean, not to defend my current state, Florida. I mean,
Hey man, Gavin Newsom really put his balls on his table. He said, "Okay, I hear you, but here's the facts." Bam! Here's the facts. This is what I'm doing. This is why my state is better than yours. Don't talk to me about numbers you don't know what they mean. Gavin Newsom, he should have put on the shades. You should put on the glasses. You should have been like, "I'm Himothy." Put on the Newsom 5000s. Walk around like you the boss. Going like, "The fuck you talking about? I run this shit, and you're gonna come here because you know this is the best state in America." Now, personally, I don't believe that. I think Hawaii is the best state in America, the place that I was born at. But talk your shit, Gavin. Talk your shit. All right, I hear you. I hear you. See you. He has no balls, just ego. Base. Billionaires don't care about the left, right, in the middle, or mega. They have their own wicked agendas. Agreed, Sassy. Agreed. I'm here with you. More cocaine than balls. More cocaine than balls. You got him, man. You claim Joe Newsom has. All right, what does Ben Shapiro has to say to defend Florida?
And obviously, you had a debate with Governor DeSantis where you guys had this discussion.
Yeah.
But I will say that some of the statistics that you use with regard to California are aggregate statistics, not on a per capita basis. So I've heard you say, for example, that that California is the top innovation state because it has the highest number of new businesses founded. On a per capita basis, that isn't true.
How about on a per capita basis, more Floridians move into California than Californians to Florida?
I mean, that's
per capita basis.
That's fine.
Oh my God. Okay. Newsom say, "You're trying to tell me about Florida. Why the fuck is your people keep on coming to my state? You keep on telling me about Florida. Why is your people coming here? Don't talk to me about Florida. Florida don't got shit on me." Gavin Newsom's in his Duffy right now. Okay.
And on absolute,
I just want to let's establish the per capita per capita murder rate. Let's look at infant mortality per capita.
Well, we can look at violent assault rates. We can look at property crime rates.
I don't know,
but it's not.
I mean, Jacksonville versus San Francisco.
California, outside of immigration, has had a net loss of population for the past several years.
But immigration is part of the secret sauce of California, going back to its origins.
I understand, but if you lose people like me and the 80 employees I took with me and members of my family,
I'm not happy about anyone leaving the state, but population's grown 3 years in a row. The last time it declined, it went down with 11 other states, and we lost 151 people.
If you're talking not about immigration, if you're just talking,
damn, Newsom's cooking the shit out of Ben Shapiro. It's like you don't really know what's going on in California. Ben Shapiro, the only reason why you have issues is because you had high taxes. The reality, we're doing fucking amazing right now. Don't worry about us, buddy. Don't worry about us over here. Oh my God, he's cooking. He's cooking. Once gas goes back up, economy is cooked. Bro, people's obsession. Gas. It's funny that gas price is the determining factor on whether or not they think that the country, the economy is good. To be fair, I don't like paying high gas prices either. I live in Ohio, so the gas prices is pretty decent over here. So, like, I understand. It's an incorrect indicator of whether or not the economy is doing well, and it's incorrect to apply the gas prices to the governor or the president. That's just not how gas price fluctuation works. But I understand, because that's like a very clear, easy thing to see. It's like the average person can see a gas price and go like, gas price. I get it. I hear you.
Talking about people who lived in California who are leaving, that number is high. And again, I'm not blaming that on you.
It could be the case in many, many states, as you know, across this country.
100%.
By the way, a lot of red states, which I'm surprised you guys don't talk more about. What about the last few years, all these red states losing folks? California hasn't been the last few years. These red states are Louisiana, Mississippi. Let's talk about those states. Let's talk about the murder rate. Adding the top 10 murder rates in America are in red states. I think there's some real problems. The most regressive taxes in the country are in these red states. Who are you for?
I mean, the question really, again, you're the governor of California, not the governor of Louisiana. If I'm speaking with the governor of Louisiana, I'd be very happy to talk about.
I just never hear anyone talk about the governor of Louisiana and the population decline.
Yeah, because last I'm aware, the governor of Louisiana, probably wasn't running for president, and also doesn't.
I don't know. Who knows? Everyone else seems to be running for president.
I never lived in Louisiana.
Running for president. By the way, let's get back to that. Bannon is running for president. He said.
Oh goodness.
You don't buy that?
No, I bet that Steve would run a vanity campaign in order to garner a few dollars and some more attention for himself. Sure, why not?
I'm gonna get back to all the California bashing here in a second, because I know everyone wants to tune in on that. But I want to keep going a little bit, just in the interest of you coming all the way out from that red state.
Sure.
Yeah, I want us to be very clear. The reason why Gavin Newsom keeps on bringing other states is not like, what's it called, obfuscation away from the point that is being made. It's so he can create a comparative analysis to provide context on the actual situation going on in California. Because people have like broad brush narratives of California without any real understanding on the how good or bad like the state itself is doing. The only way to really understand is like historical context and comparing it to other states. And what Gavin Newsom clearly portrayed is that historically, California has been improving under Gavin Newsom over the last couple of years, especially after COVID. That's what he said. And he's comparing it to other states, specifically Republican states, and he's making the clear analysis that everything we do here is better than all the Republican states. And using Florida as an example, Florida is like the only Republican state that actually seems to do well economically compared. All the other Republican states usually just like suck in comparison to all Democrat states. He consistently compares the economy, the behaviors, how they do things in California to Republicans, and go like, we're just better than the Republican state. So even your best state doesn't compare to California, and we've been improving the last couple of years. So that's the reason why he keeps on bringing it up, is to provide context of the situation, which is why Ben Shapiro really has no rebuttal to that. He can't argue against the facts that Newsom is putting out at all. And his dissatisfaction seems to completely rely on the fact that he got taxed a lot while he was there with the business, which is like, I don't care. You had a lot of money. So I'll be honest, you have a lot of money, you're going to get a lot of taxes. That's just par for the course. It is what it is. I'm a paid actor. I wish I was a paid actor. Give me more money. Give me some money. I'll act. I could act. I could be a villain. I could be a damsel in distress. I could be a cool guy. I could be an athlete. I could be a musician. Pay me a little bit. I'll act a little bit for you. What is the holdup of what? Imagine back Gavin Newsom or anything. I mean, hey, man, if you want to ignore everything he's saying, he's just cooking Ben Shapiro here. I can't help you. Come out with the reasons why he's wrong. Come on. Florida losing tourism. Its real estate bubble's popping. Insurance is insane. How HOAs can hide debt from purchasers. Devious. I'll be honest, you've been cooking all day. You've been cooking all day, Devious. You got it. Had a front row seat to the Trump clan way before the internet. We were their first grift. Now they are grifting on a grander scale. What does he say? Brace yourselves for impact. Based on data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released on January 2026, grocery prices are not down overall. They are rising. Indeed. Correct. When your Secretary of State for illegals, it's going to grow. What? I don't, Brave. Have you been listening to what Gavin said all day? I don't know what you're referring to be honest. You're wrong because you're not from California. Based, I don't deserve an opinion because I'm not in California. You cooked me. You fucking cooked me.
Or Florida, because it is interesting, just in terms of just as you laid out the framework of the media environment in this country, and how fragmented it's become, et cetera. This notion of trust and truth, and how things are weaponized, and how everybody, society becomes how we behave, and how you indicted a little bit my press office, which I appreciated the direct point you made on that, and I'm not naive about that. I think about that all the time. When we put up a mirror to Trump, we become more like him. And are you complicit in that?
Not unique to you. Yeah. Obviously, we've had things at our company that have been said. That's not unique. I will say that I think that for elected politicians who are hoping for a better future where we all come together, it is a problem. And, I don't like the catastrophism. I've criticized it on the right, too. The sort of
Ben, although I do appreciate your willingness to engage with Gavin Newsom right now, let's all be on the same page. The only reason why you're doing this is because everybody hates Jews right now on the right. That's just the truth. But hey, Ben, if you want to be based, be based. Have a little backbone.
Catastrophism that you see in a functioning democracy, which is what the United States is. It is a functioning republic. You know, when, for example, when the president decided to push for redistricting, and then you push back with your proposition, I actually didn't have a problem with that. I thought, you know, that is a normal use of the political mechanisms in order to fight back by one side against another. What I do have a problem with is if you go on Stephen Colbert and say you're worried there won't be a legit election in 2028.
But I feel that. I mean, if I believe that,
do you really believe that?
I really believe that.
But then why are you?
Remember when Ben Shapiro said the institutions will hold when he was debating Destiny? Hey man, we're to vote for Trump because the institutions will hold. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? What are we talking about? Now it's like, you really think he means that? Like, Ben, what does Donald Trump has to say for you to realize that this motherfucker is insane? Ben, lock the fuck in.
You running, or why would you consider
running? I want to make sure because we have agency, we can shape the future. It's not something to experience.
But I didn't believe it when President Trump said it. So President Trump said in 2020.
I think he wants, I believe in it. He tried
you truly believe that President Trump is going to try to run in 2028?
No, I believe that he'll try to watch.
Destiny was way too nice to Ben during his civility arc. I agree. I'll be honest. Definitely way too nice. Which is funny. Oh man, Devious. It would have been hilarious if you were here earlier. So I streamed earlier. I had a MAGA guy on. So the MAGA guy who came onto my stream, it was a podcast episode. So we're doing a podcast episode. He wanted to come onto the stream and talk about his book. This guy was a gay Christian Trump supporter. And whoa, I'll be honest, it was not a good look for my boy, man. It was not a good look. I asked questions he couldn't answer. I asked more questions he could not answer. It was one of the more brutal podcast episodes I had. And let's just say it made Becca look really bad. I don't think I might post the video version on the YouTube channel. The audio version will be on the podcast for sure. But yeah, it was not good. It would have been hilarious to have you here. You and Patty, if you guys were there, that would have been hilarious. Someone said, look what is doing to this country, felon at that. You're cooking, Sassy. You're cooking.
See, this sort of stuff is very dangerous to me. Because I heard it from the right in the aftermath of 2020, and you'll recall I was one of the few on the right.
Yeah, I don't know how you're gay Christian and
that Joe Biden was legitimately elected in 2020, and that if someone could provide me evidence that he was not, that was sufficient to overcome the burden of proof.
What Trump tried to do.
Well, I mean, what is the thing that you think?
I mean, he's dialing up for 12,000 votes in Georgia. He ended up pardoning. I mean, were you supportive of every one of these parties?
I'm not justifying.
Try to light democracy.
I'm not justifying what he said to Brad Raffensperger over in Georgia.
Yeah,
Brad Raffensperger, by the way, did the right thing. I think Mike Pence did the right thing, by the way, in certifying the election. But my point is that when it comes to, if you want the country to continue to work together, then if you set the predicate, if I lose, it was rigged, and this is true for either side.
I can't stand that.
Then we need some objective metrics. With you on that. Then if you're going to say that, we need some
objective metrics. Ben, oh man, this pisses me off so much. If you think that what Mike Pence did was good, if you understand what Donald Trump did is bad, if you understand the false slate of elector scheme that Donald Trump did was bad, you understand all of this. As a matter of fact, you're going so far as to preach to Gavin Newsom that you shouldn't kind of bleed into this rhetoric. Then how the fuck do you justify supporting this man who tried to overturn the election based off of bullshit? Like, Ben, your morals are inconsistent. You logically understand what's happening, but you're willing to sacrifice it for what? For what? For what, Ben? For what? I just don't get it. I don't understand what's going on with this guy. This guy doesn't make sense to me.
Objective metrics by which we can adjudicate whether or not the election will be fairly decided. And it seems to me that just in terms of how elections are conducted globally, and again, I'm in favor of many of these sort of election reforms that have been proposed, for example, voter ID. I think it's kind of silly to argue that you shouldn't have to show ID when you vote. But do I think that we are at high risk in the United States of full-scale national elections with 150 million voters being stolen, and that the elective leadership is then fundamentally illegitimate, which leaves you with no choice, presumably, but to go to the mattresses, which is what you don't want?
No,
like that sort of language, I think, is really, really
and I don't
dangerous.
see it on, but back to the point you were making earlier about the aggregate, we're talking about a few thousand votes here and there that ultimately determine that election for the nation on the basis of the electoral map. So I think it's more prone to concern than you may suggest.
But I think
that concern, by the way,
specific problems so that we can actually agree on the specific
Oh,
solutions.
I'm with you, and that's why I'm calling it out now. And I try to provide evidence to back up my point as it relates to the Department of Justice and how it gets weaponized. And I've seen it from my party as well. Sure as hell seen it from Trump's perspective, what they try to do with the BORTAC teams on the day of the election here under Prop 50, where they send folks out.
Ben isn't that sorry. I've seen him get destroyed. Ben, the thing is, he's smart for like MAGA standards, because we know MAGA standards are like in the like fucking gutter. But yeah,
Out and these guys all dressed up to try to chill free expression and free speech on election day, where Trump tweets out that morning saying this is a rigged election. The fact that he's out there suggesting that all the vote by mail is illegal, and a bunch of illegal immigrants are out there doing all of these things. You start stacking them, including trying to rig midterm elections as it relates to changing the maps, and what he tried to do on January 6th. Yeah. I start getting a little bit concerned.
I don't want to lump all those things in together, because I don't think they're all the same.
They're not all the same, but they stack together from my perspective. It's not one action. It's a sum total of all of those things, including sending out ICE.
But it is very difficult to argue. Here's the thing. It's very difficult to argue over intentions, because now I'm in the business of mind reading, which I can't do.
Trump's not.
What the fuck kind of response is that, Ben? What the fuck kind of response is that? I can't read Trump's mind. So all these things that correlate to a level of abuse of power and overstepping of boundaries of authority, of executive, like legal, like responsibility. Like, I can't read your mind, so I can't come to contextual conclusions of the type of behavior you're doing, leading to a very specified result. You're a fucking lawyer. What the fuck you mean you can't like read your mind, so I can't come to conclusions? Isn't one of the biggest things about being a lawyer is come to conclusions using fucking context? What the fuck have you learned in law school? What did you learn in law school? What does circumstantial evidence mean? What does the preponderance of the evidence mean? Do you need to know the intent? Do you need to know the state of mind? No, that's fucking ridiculous, Ben. You're better than that. That's a fucking dumbass response. I can't read his mind. Go fuck yourself. What are we talking about?
Trump's not. He's telling you what he thinks.
I know, and I will
so it's
criticize
not even
him
mind reading.
when he says what he thinks, I'll criticize. So, for example, when he said 2020 was a rigged election, he said, you'll recall, in 2020, on the night of the election, he said, I won before all the results were in. I came out before anybody, and I said, that's wrong. The election is not over yet. All the votes have not been counted.
Good
right?
For you.
So I tried to. I try, and I think the responsible thing to do is, and I don't always do this, but I think that the responsible thing to do is to try and hone in on the specific behavior. So, you mentioned that it would be election rigging, if it
focus on the specific behavior, but you're 100% right, Devious. Like, if Hitler said that, didn't say he was anti-Semitic, apparently he didn't know the intent of Hitler trying to kill Jews, right? He didn't know the intent. Somehow he can come to conclusions of the intent of Nick Fuentes, even though Nick Fuentes says he doesn't hate Jews, right? He doesn't say that. But you draw context from his rhetoric about Jews. You talk context about him saying Hitler was base, that Donald Trump should be more like Hitler. You come to the conclusion, maybe this guy hates Jews. How do you come to the conclusion? Using context. But I guess context only matters when you feel like it. Right, Ben? Right, Ben? Right? Come on, bro. What are we doing? Self-serving answer.
President Trump is pushing for gerrymandering in Indiana. I don't think that's election rigging. I don't think it's election rigging when you gerrymander in California. I think that is a long practice part of American politics. Yeah. And I don't think that you did anything wrong, actually, in pushing for it in California, as much as it does not benefit the party that I tend to vote for, right, and of whom I'm a member, of which I'm a member. So, you know, when the general tenor, and this is what I see in democratic crises that you see around the world, one of the things that I see is both sides saying, if the other side wins, it was rigged.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, though. I'll double down on being crystal clear. I can't stand that any more than you can stand that. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm concerned about the inputs between now and 2028, including concerned about folks that you know well, Steve Bannon and others, saying there'll be a third Trump term. The fact that I was in the
I think Steve's totally full of shit. And by the way, I think that people should stop giving Steve attention for saying things that are complete horseshit.
And I appreciate that.
And the only reason why he said that is because he turned against you and becoming much more anti-Israel and anti-Jewish, huh? Huh, Ben? Huh, Ben? Come on. That's why. Oh, man, I just can't buy, like, this, like, what is this? Authenticity of Ben Shapiro right now. I just can't buy it. I just... funny thing, Trump gets a fake peace prize from FIFA just 4 days before Trump's DOJ suspended their investigation of corruption in FIFA. Not only that, but Donald Trump, the vice president of Venezuela gave her, was it the vice president? Either her or someone else gave their Nobel Peace Prize to Donald Trump to make him feel better. This guy is a fucking child. This guy is an absolute child. Republicans love Jews because most Christians are Republicans and believe what the Bible says. They're God's chosen people. Because most Christians are Republicans and believe what the Bible says. Yeah, sure. Like Ted Cruz, right? He said that we should help Israel because of the Bible or whatever. Yeah, I guess so. Even though, who killed Jesus Christ? Who killed Jesus Christ? Yeah.
But should I give attention to Donald Trump when I sat there in the Oval Office for 90 minutes and he tells me to turn around and there's a picture on the wall or painting on the wall of FDR, and I look at him and I smile and he goes, I said, oh, here's the third term. He goes, what about 4 terms? Should I take him seriously?
Okay, so
should I take him literally?
I will say,
I don't know. I'm just a question.
I know, and my general
That's
answer,
the president.
And my general answer to this is, if we've watched Donald Trump for 10 years, and we're still doing the thing where we all take him explicitly literally, I think that so
Maduro.
Ben, go fuck you. Ben, please go fuck yourself. Ben, I know you're trying so hard to not be anti-MAGA because Ben knows the moment he starts becoming anti-Trump, he's out of the Daily Wire, one, and he loses a lot of his base because a lot of them are MAGA. He knows that is the case. That's why he refuses to use logic when it matters most. He knows that's the case.
So people
or has
okay. It turns out Maduro should have, but you know, one of the things that I remember I would get this critique about President Trump a lot is President Trump, as I've said multiple times on his epitaph, it will read 45th and 47th presidents of the United States. He said a lot of shit. You know, like the thing I'm not going to pretend.
I take my presidents a little more seriously than most.
I don't think you do. And this is the thing where I really doubt it. I see a lot of people who Trump will fire off a random tweet and everybody kind of laughs because it's President Trump. If I'm going to pretend that is coming from the same thought process as whatever comes from Joe Biden's press office, which went through 7 layers.
Ben, he's the fucking president. He tells the DOJ to do something, they fucking do it. What the fuck are you talking about? He's a president of the United States of America. What do you mean you're picking and choosing whether or not to believe him when he says something? What the fuck are we doing?
and maybe not the president.
Very different.
Then I'm not gonna pretend that's the same thing because I'm not an idiot. You know.
And that's look. And by the way, I could not agree even more. And that's I think reflected in the humor I'm trying to put back in on my social media.
And actually, I think it's kind of a problem for you because I think that frankly, the stuff that you're doing is more thought out than the stuff that President Trump does. Meaning, I think that President Trump is waking up at 3 a.m. if he wants to sleep at all, and he's firing off stuff on Truth Social, right? And so, am I supposed to take that as seriously as you, in a methodical fashion, saying, you know what, I'm going to prank him back? And I think that people people who are your supporters do take you in that way more literally than they would be apt to take President Trump.
I think, a lot of my support has been offended by what we're trying to do. But
wants me to notice
no, look, and a lot, I think, appreciate the humor that we bring to it. And I do think I think it's reflected in I think a sense of agreement that we have in that respect as it relates to what Trump puts out all the time. But
like if you win the 2028 election, I will call you president of the United States, right? Because that election will be legitimate. And if it's J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or whoever else.
He's in a, Ben, I don't trust your word for a second. You're full of shit. Sucks for you. Trump will be there for 6 more years. Based. We need dictators, right? Dictator Trump, Daddy Trump. Will you let Trump fuck you in the ass to become president? Answer me that question. Would you let Trump suck you off like Bubba? Answer me that question. 2028 Trump. He fucks you in the ass. Give me the answer. Tell me. Our next Democratic president who will be elected in 2028. It'll be either, I'm guessing it's going to be Newsom. That's my best guess. Kamala, I don't know. I think there's just too much people who just don't want a woman president, I'm being honest. So I don't really see Kamala. Who was the other people? I guess... What's his name? Mark Nelly? Is that his name? I don't know. He doesn't have too much clout. Pete Buttigieg. Let's see if he can raise his name recognition. He can be an interesting candidate. What other Democratic candidates? I don't think AOC's running. She could. I don't know. There's just a lot of like anti-AOC. Mark Kelly. Why did I think it was Nelly? Mark Kelly. More than likely, it's going to be Gavin Newsom. He's very popular right now, and also he's like a white guy. I'm gonna be honest. It makes certain people comfortable, for sure. I agree, Dennis. It's kind of weird to me. Who's going to be president 2028 so we can get rid of that pig we have now? Facts. Got to get that orange weirdo out of here. Melania likes Newsom. Melania would love Newsom too. You know what I'm saying? She wished that Newsom was her guy. You think Trump can give her what she needs? Fuck no. Trump can't give her what she needs. Let's be honest about it. Come on. Let's be honest.
As an American, I called Donald Trump president of the United States, Mr. President.
See you
of course.
Tuesday.
And so I'm with you on that.
Yes.
But that doesn't suggest that I believe for a second, and you haven't respectfully convinced me that I'm wrong or errant, that he won't do everything in his power to manipulate the outcome. I think it's time of life. If he was 20 years young.
I think Donald Trump said recently that we don't need a 2026 midterms. Let me find the quote. I think he said this fucking recently. Donald Trump saying we don't need 2026 elections. So what did he say? Oh, high prices. Kind of Iran piece is hard. Frustration could lose control. Right here. So right here, He said the president expressed frustration that his Republican Party could lose control of the U.S. House of Representatives or the Senate in this year's midterm elections, citing historical trends that have seen the party in power lose seats in the second year of a presidency. What the fuck? Why'd he go down? And this is his response. It's some deep psychological thing, but when you win the presidency, you don't win the midterms, Trump said. He boasted that he had accomplished so much that when you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election. What president says we shouldn't have an election? Like, how does that come out of your mouth? Why is that even in your thought process? He's talked about running a third term. He's talking about we don't need a 2026 election. Like, it's President of the United States saying this, ladies and gentlemen. Like, what are we doing?
Younger, I absolutely believe he'd run for a third term. But his time of life suggests that that's not going to be the case. But I do think he's going to try to hardwire.
This also implicates. You see the reason I'm concerned about this, because it also implicates.
Even Trump calls MAGA stupid people. Really? That's funny as fuck.
There's a lot of gridlock, right? There are a lot of various moving parts. When you're trying to get something done at the state level, you've got local governments that can impede you. You've got a legislature that can say no to you, right? You've got a bunch of it. You've got a judiciary that will tell you no in certain areas. You know, there's a ruling a couple of weeks ago that I strongly agree with from the judiciary with regard to, for example, school districts and what they can and should tell parents about their kids.
That's going to be thrown out, but we'll get
but you know, when
Benitez decision, yeah.
But when it comes to, you know, what President Trump is or is not trying to do, the problem is when we say that he will try to steal this. Will the election be stolen? That relies now on an opinion about, for example, the Supreme Court of the United States, or an opinion about the various state legislatures and courts, and so now
that's a fucking ridiculous point. It doesn't rely on any other factors other than the individual making the statement. We're not making the claim that he will get a third term. We're making the claim that he wants a third term. Ben Shapiro, stop fucking squirming your way around the point that is being made. The point is what his intentions are. Even having the intentions themselves are extremely harmful. They're damaging. It erodes the trust that people have in the legitimacy of a president, and it's his willingness or her willingness to abide by the Constitution with 2 terms. So it's like, Ben, fuck off. This is not about the Supreme Court. It's about Donald Trump. It's about his delusional followers. Like, what are we talking about?
Now you're not just implicating what President Trump might try to do. You're now implicating pretty much every major institution that is electoral in nature.
There's a lot of evidence, and I know both sides have argued a lot of evidence as it relates to the weaponization of justice and the bias that's expressed in a lot of these federal judicial opinions. And it's it's a little alarming. I mean, as a father of a judge who reveres the courts, and you know, as someone that I was very proud of, my father may have been accused of being an activist judge, but he, in many occasions, calling balls and strikes.
Trump isn't dictator enough. That sounds like a Nick Fuentes take right there.
And you know, I revere that sense of justice. That's where justice is found, with an objective analysis. But no, I do worry about the Supreme Court. You may not. I'm concerned about the Supreme Court of the United States. I'm concerned about what Donald Trump did after January 6th, the degree that he went to ultimately try to stay in office. Yes, I'm concerned about the actions he's taken, not any one of them from the midterm redistricting, but the sum total of many of them. And yes, I'm concerned if we don't take back the House of Representatives and we have no oversight and we continue to have the supine Congress, we may not have a country that we recognize. I really believe that. I do.
And it's fine to believe all of those things. I will say that to articulate them as though they are all of equal levels of alarm, or that the sum total.
Okay. And address the sum total. Stop fucking squirming. Address the sum total.
Is that if we don't win the next election, the country's over, which again is something that you hear very often from the right too.
But Ben, you understand the difference of the totality of evidence. You understand this. The right's perception that the country will be over if a Democrat wins is fucking delusional. It's not bedded in reality. You know this. I know this. Gavin Newsom gave you several instances of Trump action and Trump's statements, and also his followers' actions and his followers' statements. Like, what are we doing? They're not equivalent, not even close. Oh my God, bro. It's ridiculous.
I think that sort of alarmism is quite bad for American politics. And I don't think that anyone who's in electoral politics actually believes that, because I promise you that if a Republican wins in 2028, a Democrat will then run in 2032. And if the reverse is true,
DGP,
same thing will happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, I do. I just the level.
And I think the American people should know that, because it gives them a sense, okay, I didn't win this time, but I might win next time. And once the American people start to believe they can never win, or their side is always.
Tell me how his dick tastes. Tell me how my dick tastes, Brave. Is it salty? I don't think it's salty. I ate some pizza today, so it might be salty. Let me know if it's salty. I also had some Subway cookies, so it might be a little sweet. It might be a little sweet. Trump sucks ice, definitely. Trump pushes the limit. He would be more dictator if he could be. 100%. 100%. If we had less members of Congress in the Donald Trump would do way more shit. Would do way more shit. Let's go on with the confession of Sasha Riley. Who's Sasha Riley? I have no idea who that is.
Cut out.
And I love what you're saying. The spirit of what you're saying. What you're saying, I completely concur with. I have a different level of anxiety based upon my own direct experience, not just direct experience with Donald Trump. My concern about the rule of law, this notion of co-equal branch government. In your book, you talk about sort of the fundamental Judeo-Christian values of this country, with the best of Greek democracy.
And by the way, I think that the best way to do that, actually, and this would benefit you as governor of the state, is devolution of more authority back down to the states, devolution of more governmental authority back down to the local levels, and more robust checks and balances of the
your lips to God in the White House's ears. Yeah, I'm a little.
And I hope you remember that if you become president.
This notion of federalism and 10th Amendment. Yeah, I remember. The red states were arguing for that during those Obama years. God bless you. No, back to your being more consistent, and I respect that, and that's why we're here. And I respect you, and I appreciate.
I don't respect him, Gavin, and he's not consistent at all. Ben Shapiro is very inconsistent. Sasha Riley's released set of interview tapes that states Trump's complicit on snuff films and rape. Is there like new, like he came in? Okay. I know about like certain things that are said about Trump. Is this a new thing that came out? Because he just came into the chat saying that. Like, is this a new thing? Has a new piece of evidence come out recently? Is that what you're referring to? Two guys verbally jerking each other up. At least was a minor abuse, and there are confessions. That is terrible. Is this the... I mean, I agree with you. We don't rock with pedophiles over here. Pedos. I don't... I checked that out. Blew my mind. Is this a new thing? To be fair, I never looked into the confessions. I know we were talking about... Is this the 13-year-old? Dropped in the last week. Is this the 13-year-old, or is this someone else? Sasha Riley. I might have to talk about that in a stream, in a different stream, the Sasha Riley stuff. I didn't see the confessions. I didn't see that. I think I know what you're talking about, though. Or actively alienating allies and trade partners. The facts. Our relationship with our allies are fucked.
This opportunity to engage, even though obviously we have fundamental disagreements on a lot of these issues. Maybe not fundamental, just disagreements on a lot of these issues. Let me go back to some of the disagreements, and I don't want to paint too much and color this in, because as a Democrat, it's in my interest to do so. But you got a lot of attention for going recently to America Fest, Turning Point USA. You made a terrible decision of being the first speaker. That's just me saying editorially. What the heck were you thinking?
That is not my decision, right? They invited me. They gave me a slot. That's
just your luck, because then every speaker can come on and
that's okay. I got to say what I wanted to say, and then
so paint the picture. What did you say? Sure. So people tuning in know what the hell we're talking about. You went.
All right, I'm good enough. I think I had my good fill of this conversation. I am curious what the comments are saying from Gavin Newsom's podcast. What are they saying? If you change the speed to 0.75, Ben sounds normal and Gavin sounds drunk. Okay. Gavin's on camera persona is the complete opposite of his social media post.
Yeah, for sure. Does anybody have an argument advocating for no ID to vote? It makes no sense to me. I don't know. From my understanding, there's really no good argument. All right. I feel like Gavin agreed with 99% of what Ben said. Gavin verbalized it multiple times. He agrees with Ben, what just said in the video. Percent of his policies changed in California reflect what he said, just agreed upon with Ben. It's just so intellectually dishonest. I don't think he agreed with 99% of what Ben said. This is just not a true statement. He had a whole disagreement about Trump, and he had a whole disagreement of like California. Now that's I guess I didn't expect. I guess I'm not surprised because Ben Shapiro is getting casted out by MAGA. We'll talk about. He did talk about California.